authoritative, ostensibly derived from an almost irretrievably remote past. At another more quotidian level, English is considered difficult, Sanskrit is scoring, and Hindi is somewhere in between. For the present, I focus on the preliminary pages and prose selections, drawing occasionally on the visuals in the texts. Now, all these texts contain preliminary pages, often conventional, but these are valuable for that very reason. A typical statement, and this is from a cheap private publication for class 1, reads, "The passages not only build vocabulary but also provide information and instill value education on a variety of subjects in the real world." By class 3 in the same series, we are told the passages are based on topics that provide knowledge of the history and geography, among other things, of people, places, and animals in the world. The Hindi books, again private publications, emphasize the experience of the authors, regard grammar as foundational, and the effort to make the dry subject entertaining, literally converting the niras into the manoranjak, choosing themes derived from different spheres of life. They also hope to establish the correct or true or standardized Sahi Hindi. The preliminary pages in the NCERT Sanskrit textbook for class 7 display a different set of concerns. These include an attempt to link school with the world outside and the hope that Ratana Pravritti, that is rote learning, will decline. Also included is the national anthem. There's another preliminary page that is at once challenging and opaque because it is literally in fine print. This contains excerpts from the Bal Adhikar Ghoshana Patra, that is the Declaration of the Rights of Child, translated into Hindi. This is unique in that it acknowledges that children can be and are subjected to exploitation and oppression, and that there are provisions, at least notionally, for redress. The NCERT Hindi book for the same class includes a set of pages titled Shikshak Se. This suggests moving beyond traditional language teaching, Paramparik Bhasha Shikshan, focusing on nature, society, science and history. Regional vocabularies, Anjalik Shabda and multilingualism, Bahubhashita, find space. Grammar is integrated into the text. The demands on the teacher may seem exciting and a bit overwhelming. There is a sense of entering relatively uncharted waters and of change rather than fixity. Sahi Hindi is not particularly visible in this scheme of things. In the CBSE publications, a podium on the inside cover blithely assures the reader of entering a better world with the shift to continuous comprehensive evaluation. The preliminary pages of the private publication for Sanskrit class 7, which is much more expensive than the other private publications I was talking about, are rather different. The inside front cover carries a certificate for the best textbook produced, awarded by the Federation of Educational Publishers in India. The preface in Hindi emphasizes the need to make Sanskrit acceptable and simple for students. There is a brief allusion to changing educational values, policies, changing times, life skills, as well as thoughts. The last page contains a set of prayers, including the famous Gayatri Mantra, a prayer for longevity, a Guru Vandana in praise of the teacher, and the well-known Upanishadic mantra, Asatu Ma Satgamaya. The visual frame of the page includes and appropriates a range of religious traditions through simple visual motifs. So girls and boys, including a Sikh and a Muslim, are all shown praying together. Generally, there is a focus on imparting information or skills to more or less passive recipients. Also, these textbooks are addressed to an unmarked learner. She is almost invariably and often visibly middle class or upper class, or at least aspiring to the status. Caste is virtually invisible and often seems unmentionable. Moreover, the unmarked and overwhelming presence of the majority community is naturalized. Thus, the preliminary pages prepare us for texts that reinforce the status quo with little or no space for constructive engagement with diversities. With the exception of the NCERT books, which assume that learners learn best if their contexts are taken into consideration, the different histories of learners in terms of gender, class, caste, community, region, abilities are virtually not acknowledged. While the NCERT books do not always systematically follow through these connections, they open up interesting possibilities and even troubling possibilities at times. However, even the most pragmatic texts are by no means monolithic. There are complex, uneasy negotiations with differences. These sometimes unintentionally open up spaces that are potentially valuable. I next turn to the way in which proper names are used in these books. Exercises in language books often build around named protagonists, ostensibly ordinary people. These provide an entry point and a marker of identity for both teachers and learners. Hence, examining the use of names is illuminating. Let us start with the lowest rung, again class 1. In the English book, all the named adults who are figures of authority included a dentist called Dr. Verma, a father Mr. Seth, a teacher Ms. Indrani, and a Dr. Sharma. All inhabitants of an unmarked middle, if not upper class, and possibly upper caste and dominant community believed. This practice of naming is exemplified elsewhere as well. So all the names in the class 7 private publication Sanskrit would be understood as Hindu and possibly upper caste. A more detailed examination of the names used in the English course communicative workbook for class 10 shows how this strategy is used. There are around 170 names that would conform to the pattern found in the class 7 Sanskrit book. Only 15 names are derived from Persian or Arabic or Urdu, and an equal number from English or European languages. Names, as we know, vary according to region as well, so it is noteworthy that names that are distinctively South Indian are few and far between. And for what has come to be designated as the Northeast, there is a single girl named Mary. These names are built into routine exercises. The space they provide could have been used to introduce a variety of proper names from different regions and traditions. This may not be a case of deliberate omission. Nonetheless, it is troubling as it indicates the almost subconscious choices made by the authors of these exercises, rendering the very existence of diverse populations virtually invisible. Then we turn to the issue of class. Most of the children we encounter are well-to-do. Starting from class 1, and this is in a cheap private publication, we meet children who bathe twice in summer and wear clean socks because, and I quote, "Wearing dirty socks makes the feet smelly and I would not be able to bear that." From this perspective, cleanliness becomes a matter of individual choice. The very real threat of a disruptive scenario with structural constraints, including acute water shortages, is not allowed to intrude into this work. And this continues into the more expensive private publications where it's a comforting, tension-free world in which children read, write, eat, drink, go to school and play. The middle class is also taken for granted in the CBSE English books for class 10, where cars are common, as are expensive clothes. Issues of health thought to be of concern include sleep deprivation associated with typically middle-class jobs and obesity, while stress busters include recommendations of laughter yoga. Less exalted occupations find little or no visibility in these texts. In some instances, the learner is provided with generic statements such as the following: "Bread and butter are what the poor want," or "It is impossible to ignore the beggars on the roads." Apart from being construed as a menace, the ordinarily invisible poor are occasionally present so that we can help them. Both donor and recipient are expected to accept this relationship cheerfully. Then, turning to caste. When we were in school, we were taught somewhat unimaginatively, perhaps, about untouchability, regarded as the most extreme form of casteism. It was only later that one learned to recognize as a privileged upper caste person the all-pervasive, invisibilized presence of caste in everyday situations. While this persists, it is sad to note that caste is now not even mentioned in most language textbooks. Even when it does figure, the ways in which it is introduced is troubling. And one can see this in this particular passage from the class 10 English book published by the CBSE, where the boy who writes washerman instead of deputy commissioner for his father's name is the butt of ridicule. So also when you have figures like the Tamil Dalit woman writer Bama being introduced, their specific caste identities are glossed over. As a result, the opportunity to recognize, contextualize and problematize caste is lost, if not deliberately ignored. Now, once caste is eradicated and class, community and region more or less standardized, gender can be conveniently addressed in simple if not simplistic ways. For instance, gender parity is often achieved through visuals, as in the Sanskrit book, where visuals of men and women and boys and girls are almost evenly balanced. This is also posted by accounts of women achievers such as astronauts. Such narratives may have inspirational value. However, one wonders why virtually all the heroes of rags to riches stories are men. Recent months have witnessed a recognition of the rights of transgenders, enabling entry into educational and other institutions. If they are to inhabit these spaces meaningfully, they require visibility in meaningful ways, as do persons with disabilities. As of now, there is a deafening silence about the former and a token presence of the latter in most textbooks. Now, turning to the more explicitly and obviously historical parts of these books, biographies provide an entry point into history. Consider the example of the Buddha in the class 7 private Sanskrit textbook. This is set in an undefined past. It's set once upon a time, Puran. The last sentence summarizes his teaching. It says, and I just translated it, he taught about ahimsa in order to ensure the well-being of all the people in the world. Thus, the more complex social teachings of the Buddha, including the potential for equality in the spiritual realm, are excised. Historically, Jainism laid far more emphasis on ahimsa than Buddhism, but evidently ahimsa is regarded as a catchphrase that is at once safe and popular. Now, the choice of a great woman in the NCERT Sanskrit book is refreshingly unusual. You have a reference to Pandita Ramabai there, and the chapter mentions her birth, her unusual access to Sanskrit learning. Troubling themes such as poverty, famine and death are touched on. Her marriage, the birth of her daughter, her concerns about women's education, her journey to England and then to America, as well as the influence of Christianity are noted, as are her efforts to rehabilitate widows. Finally, her major writings are mentioned. While the densely packed information may not be easily accessible to the learner, it challenges one to think beyond the more neat narratives of successful women and introduces the complexities of lived histories. Gandhi figures as early as class 2, and the information is often cryptic. This is a line from the class 2 cheap private publication for English, which says, Mahatma Gandhi taught the Indian people to protest against British rule by following the path of non-violence or ahimsa. Perhaps such statements prepare the ground for accepting what is bracketed off as historical information uncritically, spaces for discussion, debate and questions. Thematically, many biographies, as I mentioned earlier, of men are built around rags to riches narratives, exemplified by the biography of Walt Disney. And part of the last sentence reads, his life story, this is from the Hindi book, it's a cheap publication once more. His life story teaches us that if one nurtures one's dreams with determination, hard work and self-confidence, even in the most difficult circumstances, then one can achieve success. You do occasionally have more complex narratives, such as the class 7 Hindi narrative for Dhanraj Pillai, which you have in the NCERT book, but these are exceptional. So most biographies tend to be located within a very narrow framework. The other kinds of histories that you have are of the spectacular. So you have as early as again class 2 discussions on the pyramids, the Great Wall of China follows soon after, Leaning Tower of Pisa, Taj Mahal, caves and paintings of Ajanta. And in some of these books, in one of these books, again a cheap private publication for English, there's a description of the Akshardham temple in Delhi. Some of the information in these sections is obviously problematic. So you have one page on Mughal painting, which quickly degenerates into a list of emperors who are classified in terms of their fondness or otherwise for painting. And here we meet the much maligned Aurangzeb for the first time. It was Aurangzeb, son of Shah Jahan, who had little interest in art. During his rule, the art of Mughal painting began to decline. And other stories, such as stories of clothing or cricket, etc., occurred occasionally, but they are exceptional rather than typical. Now, in terms of causes, contexts, and contingencies, in a world that is driven by concerns about productivity and the GDP, it is not surprising that most narratives of change hinge around the idea of hard work and sincere efforts being rewarded. The concluding sentence of one such story, again from the relatively cheap Hindi book, is as follows: "Parishram karne wale kabhi dukhi nahi hote." And this is for class 4. An equally simple cause and effect linkage, this time embedded in the notion of karma, is established through the narrative of Shravan Kumar from the Ramayana. And then you have decision making being praised. So you have a statement, this is from the class 10 CBSE book. Decision making is a very vital part of our lives. This is because where we are today is largely the result of the decisions we took in the past. Similarly, whatever happens tomorrow will be a result of the decisions we take in the present. So all that you need to do is actually take the right decision. You do have occasional complex narratives as well. And I'll just cite one example, which is from APJ Abdul Kalam's autobiography, where he says the Second World War broke out in 1939. This again is there in the class 10 CBSE book. For reasons I have never been able to understand, a sudden demand for tamarind seeds erupted in the market. I used to collect the seeds and sell them. A day's collection would fetch me the princely sum of 1 anna. Our area being isolated was completely unaffected by the war. But soon India was forced to join the Allied forces. The first casualty came in the form of the suspension of the train halt at Rameshwaram station. The newspapers now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train. That forced my cousin Shamsuddin, who distributed newspapers in Rameshwaram, to look for a helping hand to catch the bundles, and as if naturally, I filled the slot. Shamsuddin helped me earn my first wages. Half a century later, I can still feel the surge of pride in earning my own money for the first time. Now, I'll quickly move on to the last 2 bits, one on chronology, where history teachers, we've had long discussions with both Subbu and Anita. Subbu thought I was converting the NCERT first chapter for class 6 into a maths lesson where I raised issues of chronology there, and ultimately we found ways around that. But history teachers often agonize about how to introduce concepts of time to learners. It's fascinating and somewhat baffling to see how these are taken for granted in language textbooks. The first sentence in the chapter on Helen Keller for class 2 mentions the year of her birth. By class 3, we find more complicated dates. For example, Michelangelo's date of birth and death are mentioned. In class 4, we read Joan of Arc was born as a simple peasant girl in the 15th century, so the notion of centuries. Other figures such as Tenali Rama and Birbal float through in an unspecified past. More complex chronologies are also inserted without any hesitation, and these are all from the primary books. So we learned that the pyramids were built about 4,500 years ago, or in the Middle Ages, starting out to train to be a knight was a lot of fun. Apart from the accuracy or otherwise of this statement, what is noteworthy is that the idea of the Middle Ages is introduced without any explanatory scaffolding. Elsewhere, we stumble on a disarmingly simple and precise, if somewhat misleading definition of prehistory. If you decide to become a paleontologist, you would study plants and other organisms that lived in prehistoric times. That would be a time more than 5,500 years ago. Even more striking is the description of Indian history as presented in the Akshardham temple. And I'm quoting from this book. A 12-minute boat ride in a cave-like hall introduces the visitor to the various dimensions of Indian culture as they existed 10,000 years ago. Visitors would be astonished to learn that many amazing medical and scientific discoveries were made in India even before the world knew about them. For example, plastic surgery was performed for the first time in the world in India. The concept of zero also originated in the same country. Astronomy and the understanding and prediction of eclipses, medical procedures and weaponry making were among the many other firsts in India. The assurance with which this and other statements are introduced makes it possible that young learners, if they at all pause to consider them, will accept them at face value. And there's again a complicated statement about how the alphabet was discovered, which mentions in one sentence Hebrew, Arabic and Greek, and then discusses the alphabet. So obviously these sentences will remain perhaps unraveled. This matter-of-fact approach towards chronologies provides little space for interrogation. Dates are simply to be noted and recalled. What should be of concern is not so much a question of accuracy as of the attitude of acceptance that is inculcated. Finally, consider the questions at the end of the chapters in the main coursework book for class 10, a CBSE publication. Most of these expect the learners to summarize what they have learned. For instance, the chapter on fundamentals of laughter yoga has an exercise asking the learner to write an email to his or her sister suggesting that she join a laughter club. Curiously, one of the few themes around which class debates are suggested include the right to education. And amongst the points that the learners are expected to consider are whether adequate funds are available and how can access, equity and quality be ensured. However, there are other possibilities, and perhaps one of the most fascinating of these is in a chapter in the class 7 NCERT Sanskrit book titled Anarikaya Jigyasa, Anarika's questions. This is about a young girl whose head buzzes with questions. She notices that arrangements are being made for the arrival of a minister to inaugurate a bridge. She asks whether he has built it or brought the stones or paid for it. Her father replies that workers have built it and brought the stones and people have provided the government with money. Why then should the minister inaugurate it? For once we catch a momentary glimpse of a complex and somewhat messy world outside the tiny space of the classroom. Generally, however, the language textbooks both appropriate and foreclose possibilities of historical understanding by defining the significant in terms of great men and women as well as the spectacular, and in taking complex chronologies for granted. They also usually work with simple, if not simplistic, notions of causality and only rarely venture into the contingent. At a more fundamental level, their concerns with diversity often remain superficial. Conflicts are either simplified or smoothed over. They surface only occasionally. Thus, the task for both teacher and learner trying to cultivate a complex sense of history is rendered enormously difficult. It would require the persistence of many Anarikas and Ramabais to dislodge the smooth, neat structure, an edifice whose cracks and fissures are carefully papered over and whose foundations are buried deep within the social order. Thank you.
So what I'm going to talk about is what history teaching can learn from the teaching of other disciplines, about teaching itself. So, I'd slightly change the title of what I'm going to say. It is History as Pedagogy and Pedagogy of History. And I thought it will focus it a little better because I'm not really going to talk about indoctrination. I believe that if you have an effective pedagogy, you can avoid the pitfalls of indoctrination. I begin with this very interesting quotation I came across from a book on Sri Lankan history. It's there for you to see. I'll read it out quickly. The Sri Lanka's call amongst choice to preserve these texts, not in the vernacular but in Pali, a translocal language in its own right, suggests the conscious use of the same kind of rhetorical voice that we have seen in Dharmashastra and Jaina texts. It's voice that attempts to instantiate the universal values in a particular place and time, to crystallize the essentials of the tradition, deny opposition and difference. One of the challenges of handling this kind of material then is to historicize texts, to self-presentation ahistorically, to bring multiple levels of analysis, what is essentialist, to imagine a culturally diverse world which the rhetorical voice and the text themselves will try to suppress. The problem with most of our subject-based pedagogy, disciplinary pedagogies, is that we try to fix the knowledge that we are teaching as something given, as something you have received from scholars or XYZ. This is given for you to teach. In a sense, it's a process of essentializing the knowledge. The argument that I will try to follow in the following few minutes is to see how these principles are located in the textbook practice and how they can be countered with that. So the textbooks present school knowledge as unified questioning constituting a disciplinary tradition. It uses a language which is immediately translocal, abstract form of knowledge. Even in Hindi, you will not use a colloquial English, you are trying to use a more formal, more difficult kind of. Such disciplining and essentializing of school knowledge has two purposes. It facilitates indoctrination by hiding the alternative possibilities within the discipline. It privileges those who can master unique language and content of textbooks, while simultaneously disempowering those who cannot do that. In denying multiple possibilities in knowledge construction and the language of its articulation, the current textbook culture places children of certain class and cultural backgrounds in position of advantage and others in disadvantage. The vast majority of children do not seem to be coping with the expectations being placed on them by the school system, and this is across the world. While a part of the responsibility for this can be placed at the door of resource deficiency and cultural deficiency, we need to question the very nature of school knowledge which is sought to be taught and argue that its unitary character precludes equal participation of all children. A possible solution can be sought in multiculturalism. This has some attention. And another possible solution or another aspect of the same process is historicizing school knowledge. What do I mean by historicizing school knowledge? The project of historicizing disciplines of knowledge seek to situate them within the context of human endeavor, the social contestations and that condition them, and the diverse and contradictory paths taken by them, the alternative paths abandoned or short-circuited. In thus loosening the ground on which they stand, the history gradually threatens to dissolve the disciplinary boundaries and identities, and eventually the very disciplining of thinking which they have sought to enforce. I talk about Marx, and Marx had a twin project. When he wrote his Capital, he begins by in this in his EPM, Economic and Philosophical Management, where he talks of the need to demystify and historicize. He looks at it as a dual project, and his Capital itself is structured in the sense of demystifying commodity fetishism and then historicizing the relations of production that exist in society. So in a sense, the agenda of radicalizing knowledge all along had this dual objective of demystifying, questioning politically or philosophically certain presuppositions, and then working out the history of those phenomena. The dual agenda of demystifying, historicizing hold much promise even today. We have witnessed the process of creating narrow segmented identities, utilizing history, folklore, public rituals to create shared identities and counter identities. Ironically, it accompanies a process of intensified alienation from livelihoods, resources, cultural roots and traditions, access to levers of mobility like education and so on. And even for those who are part of the modern sector like organized labor, they are, I would go one, the right to dignified labor. They are being pushed into a contractualized and capitalized labor forms. The narrowing of identities in effect mystifies identities and camouflages the larger material process of dispossession and capitalization. While demystification is a political act of rejection of worldview and subjecting it to sharp philosophical scrutiny, it has to be followed by a process of historicizing the phenomena, which appears to be natural. Historicizing not only enables us to look at a phenomenon as evolving through human social agency, but simultaneously opens possibility of empirical study and verification. Thus, it is much more than mere speculative thinking, and essentially gives the claim to be scientific in being empirical. Marx and Marxist tradition are often being accused of teleological view of history, a grand narrative of continuous and inexorable movement towards from primitive communism to capitalism and eventually to socialism. And to some extent, Marx did share with his contemporaries a compelling fascination for the capitalist rationality and apparent global triumph of capitalism, and saw history as necessarily leading to it. Such teleology needs to be replaced with genuine history which examines multiple possibilities and multiple paths. Where sociological analysis often takes functionalist forms, reinforcing a sense of there is no alternative. Historical analysis provides much needed corrective in that it demonstrates the path chosen was a result of definite conjectures and alternatives could have been chosen or can come into being given different balance of political forces. Paulo Freire often made this kind of a statement that recognizing that history is filled with possibility and it is not inexorably determined. At the same time, I think the project of historicizing has to be accompanied by a focus on spatial diversity. By spatial diversity, I mean the simultaneity of alternatives. That there is a diversity, it's not just one movement on time. At the same time, you can have diverse possibility. And this diversity is essential to negotiating the modern world. And we were given a promise by capitalism of flattening the earth, and we know that the earth doesn't remain flat. So I argue that we need to simultaneously historicize and spatialize. There's a long quotation from Giro which I will avoid for the moment because many people from the education background should be familiar with this. Now I go to how history has been used in the pedagogy of science and mathematics and the issues that they have tried to grapple with. And it's rather strange that the teaching of history itself never grappled with this problem of how to teach about itself. And I think there is much that we can learn from the other disciplines. Michael Matthews gives 7 reasons for including history of science in science curriculum, and they are listed here. It promotes comprehension of scientific concepts, existence of a strong parallel between the development of scientific concepts and in the individual and the collective practice of scientists. We'll come to some of these issues in greater detail. Intrinsic importance of the main stages of history of science, which all students should know. History of science is necessary to understand the nature of science. History of science contracts dogmatism and scienticism found in the textbooks. Incorporating the life and times of scientists helps to humanize science and make it more interesting and engaging to students. Kumkum talked about SST being boring, and the scientists think science is boring for children. History of science displays the integrative and interdependent nature of human behaviors. One year's appropriate time. Okay. Okay. the way our individual learns and the way the species has learned historically has a parallel, they move on parallel lines. So this pointer, I think, had said this. Educators' task is to make children follow the path that was followed by their fathers, passing quickly through certain stages without eliminating any of them. In this way, the history of science has to be our guide in teaching of science. And a whole tradition of incorporating history of science into, history of science and mathematics into maths and science teaching was practiced for a very long time, and remnants of it still continue. But there has been a counter-argument on this issue, and from a number of people, including Zweig, but even people like Matthews and others, to assume that an individual's mathematical development follows a historical development of mathematics means that the historical development is somehow as natural and directed as that of an organism. So this, and in contrast to this, they seek to look at the cultural roots of, in science also, they have a similar obsession with the geneticism, but it doesn't work very well with science, unlike in mathematics. So in science, you have the notion of misconceptions of children as being a repetition of historical misconceptions relating to natural phenomena. And it is presumed that scientific knowledge is counterintuitive and the misconceptions are products of intuition. It has been argued that misconceptions are in fact cultural products and they are not natural or in our DNA, as some people would like to say. Ineluctably embedded in our social practices and in the science and artifacts that mediate. So you cannot look at the misconceptions just in set of genetic behavior. Nevertheless, history of science is very extensively used, even in these forms and also in mathematics. Both these are used in the teaching of history and science. Another usage of history of science is to relieve boredom through biographic and historical vignettes. We saw some of it in the case of language textbooks. I think all of them use a bit of biographies and histories to relieve boredom. This is also used to create an image of a scientist and profession of science. I think all these are not just, they just don't relieve your boredom, they have a further function of creating images of those professions. It is said that students feel motivated by the fact that scientists who produce those ponderous ideas of people like us, who earned and bungled and made fools of themselves, like that, there are a lot of these kind of absent-minded professor kind of stories brought in. And many researchers have reported that this has immediately enhanced student involvement in the classroom. This may cause some amusement, but in reality it reflects a deeper problem with our education, which draws such firm boundaries between fact and fiction, science, arts and life. Pedagogy of disciplines and the histories of disciplines. To understand the nature of science and counter scientism and dogmatism. That's another major objective of introducing history of science. Science evolves constantly and never claims finality and so on and so forth, and it is sought to be established through the use of history of science. But several science educators have raised it as a paradox. If history of science is history of failed theories, then and that all theories are going to be replaced by better theories, then our current textbooks become the history textbooks of the future years. But this has a very important lesson for history, because one of the hallmarks of history is that every generation we feel we produce a new kind of history, and the old kind of history is replaced. And this aspect has been taken more seriously by historians, because scientists can get around it by talking of continuity and change in the tradition much more happily than historians can. when there is this process and product of history of science, the tendency to treat science as a product was critiqued and the process aspects were included, like experimentation and observation. In history, we have had a parallel movement of interpreting sources or referring to sources of diverse kinds in our textbooks. But it's done obviously much more powerfully in the science teaching programs. However, it has been argued that this only reinforces an empiricist understanding of science, and that how theorization happens in science is sort of left out, and it is believed that history of science can help in teaching about how theorization takes place in science. But then the central question is, what kind of history you're running out of time? Okay. 2 minutes and I'll post certain issues for history and then we can discuss it later. What kind of history? I think this is very central because most of the history that was purveyed as history of science and mathematics was formed by scholars of history of science and mathematics as to be very bad history. They said that what you teach in the schools as history just does not qualify as history. And many people like Klein, who I quoted down, has very categorically and famously said no history is better than bad history, so don't teach history of science in schools. But there is a tendency to glorify scientists and creating the stereotypical images of certain kind of scientists. Even more problematic has been the portrayal of history of science and mathematics as a teleological process, that what we know today had to evolve. The whole history of science was moving towards this moment of discovery. Thus, ignoring multiple cultural roots of misconcepts, of concepts, and also the choice and mistakes and abandoned modes of inquiry, they have been relegated. They are sort of hidden away from the history. And from our own country, Sundar Sarukar has made a very strong plea of multiple cultural roots of science as not just something to rectify the kind of history that is taught, but he considered it essential to make a classroom inclusive. The children from diverse social backgrounds should feel comfortable that they too inherit a tradition of science and they too can practice science, and science is not something that is alien and which has come from abroad. So in the last quotation he says, one of the greatest challenges for science education in India is to convert the status of science from an outsider status to an insider. This, I think, is a very important argument across the world, that in classrooms which consists of diverse kind of children with diverse cultural and social backgrounds, teaching of a discipline as unitary alienates a large number of children. And if it's possible to enlarge the scope of the discipline to include diverse traditions of the discipline or its origin, it may help children to engage with it better. And I think I'll stop there. And I think the implications of this for teaching of history are fairly evident, and I suppose we can do more of it.
Good afternoon, friends. So this presentation is entitled, as Bhupendra said, Subverting Nationalism and Reconstituting It, the NCERT's History and Social Science textbooks after 2005. In the interests of efficiency, I shall read the paper without even offering an introductory comment. I do hope that the problem I'll be engaging with will be fairly clear from the presentation. In recent decades, the nation state and nationalism have earned enormous flack. Partha Chatterjee has called nationalism a dark, elemental, unpredictable force of primordial nature, threatening the orderly calm of civilized life. unquote, while several others in their post-modernist moods keep dubbing it the worst invention of humanity. Social scientists have been compelled by world events over the last 3 decades to treat nationalist ideologies as dubious, immersed as these are in glorifying the collective self and fabricating opposites only to ridicule them. Our misgivings today are not about a particular nation state, but about nationalist thought in general, for it must create its others and cultivate intolerance. It must discipline and punish, demand unqualified obedience and loyalty. Yet sovereignty, the right to self-government, non-interference from external agents in the running of the state, continues to be pegged to the nation-state. The latter continues to be the key player, not just a significant actor in decisions that usually affect our lives in areas as diverse as military spending, trade, taxation, health, food security, and education. Its interventions in education keep scripting, disseminating, reproducing nationalism of one kind or another. The history, social science, and language textbooks that Kumkum has talked about of the nation state inevitably create and inculcate a national self-image. It can be argued that curricular materials in school education are almost always imagined and conceived of through nationalist frames. If nationalism must create its others and cultivate intolerance, and if the nation state, Indian or any other, must create and inculcate nationalism, there is clearly a problem at hand. How can this conundrum, this vexed, hard, puzzling question be solved? Can the National Council of Educational Research and Training, the NCERT, then subvert nationalism? Can school social science written from nationalist frames undermine or overthrow nationalism? Can it unseat the nation state and nationalism from their position as presiding deities of school textbooks? Should it? Would it ever be possible for the NCERT, the apex educational body of the nation state with national in its name, to dump nationalism as a barbaric force, even as historians, political scientists, and educationalists pronounce it to be fascistic and exclusionary? But this is exactly what the NCERT textbooks, produced in accordance with the National Curriculum Framework of 2005, seem to do. To subvert nationalism in their quest for inculcating the values of justice, equality, and humanity in children. Take, for instance, the chapter on the partition of British India from the Class 12 textbook, Themes in Indian History, Part 3. Historians and educationalists, journalists such as Shivam Vich have observed that this balanced chapter marks a huge leap forward from the old hyper-nationalist accounts, and I'm quoting here. The chapter does not mention any state-sponsored India, Pakistan, or British line, and does not drill any India line into the students' heads. It is sought to be written without certitude and brings multiple perspectives into play. Through the use of several primary and secondary sources, it encourages students to construct their own sense of the partition. For example, unlike earlier textbooks, it does not tell young people what kind of Pakistan or political entity the Muslim League demanded in 1940 through its Lahore resolution. It shares with them the relevant extracts of this resolution, nudging the students to interpret it in a valid manner. The chapter examines the causes and consequences of the partition, how the partition still lives on in our lives, and what happened to ordinary people, especially the women, during the years 46, 47, and going up to perhaps 52, or even the middle of the 1950s. And the strengths and limitations of oral history, it also talks about those. Above all, while the tortuous negotiations of 1945-47 between the British, the Congress, and the Muslim League are discussed, they do not form the be-all and end-all of the chapter. Unlike earlier textbooks, therefore, this chapter does not begin with them. It starts instead with 3 testimonies, different from each other, about the trauma of the times, but all Pakistani. Allow me to share one of these Pakistani testimonies with you as it appears in the chapter. This is a Pakistani librarian in Lahore talking to an Indian researcher, and the testimony goes like this. During my visits to the History Department Library of Punjab University, Lahore, in the winter of 1992, the librarian, Abdul Latif, a pious middle-aged man, would help me a lot. He would go out of his way well beyond the call of duty to provide me with relevant material, meticulously keeping photocopies requested by me ready before my arrival the following morning. I found his attitude to my work so extraordinary that one day I couldn't help asking him, Latif Sahab, why do you go out of your way to help me so much? Latif Sahab glanced at his watch, grabbed his namazi topi and said, I must go for namaz right now. But I'll answer your question on my return. Stepping into his office half an hour later, he continued, yes, your question, I mean my father belonged to Jammu, to a small village in Jammu district. This was a Hindu-dominated village, and Hindu ruffians of the area massacred the hamlet's Muslim population in August 1947. One late afternoon, when the Hindu mob had been at its furious worst, my father discovered that he was perhaps the only Muslim youth of the village left alive. He had already lost his entire family in the butchery and was groping for ways of escaping. Remembering a kind elderly Hindu lady, a neighbor, he implored her to save him by offering him shelter at her place. The lady agreed to help father, but said, son, if you hide here, they'll get both of us. This is of no use. You follow me to the spot where they've piled up the dead. You lie down there as if dead, and I will dump a few dead bodies on you. Lie there among the dead, son, as if dead, through the night, and run for your life towards Sialkot at the break of dawn tomorrow. My father agreed to the proposal. Off they went to that spot. Father lay on the ground, and the old lady dumped a number of bodies on him. An hour or so later, a group of armed Hindu hoodlums appeared. One of them yelled, are all these gone? Any life left in anybody? And the others started their crude staffs and guns to feel for any trace of life in that heap. Somebody shouted, there's a wristwatch on that body, and hit my father's fingers with the butt of his rifle. Father used to tell us how difficult it was for him to keep his outstretched palm beneath the watch he was wearing so utterly still. Somehow he succeeded for a few seconds until one of them said, oh, it's only a watch, come let's leave, it's getting dark. Fortunately for Abbaji, they left, and my father lay there in that wretchedness the whole night, literally running for his life at the first hint of light. He did not stop until he reached Sialkot. I help you because that Hindu Mai helped my father. I am simply returning her cuz, her debt. But I am not a Hindu, I said. Mine is a Sikh family, at best a mixed Hindu-Sikh one. I do not know what your religion is with any surety. You do not wear uncut hair, and you are not a Muslim. So for me, you are a Hindu, and I do my little bit for you because a Hindu Mai saved my father. So Shivam Vij and other commentators on Kafila.org were happy to see that a chapter on partition could begin from 1992 instead of from the 40s. The oral history of the chapter privileges the history of ordinary people. Partition was their history after all, not simply one of negotiations between Nehru, Patel, Jinnah and Mountbatten. And the chapter places multi-vocality or heteroglossia at center stage and shows how the partition has been a momentous marker in our history. For our present purposes, however, it is important to note that the chapter consciously foregrounds Pakistani experiences of the partition. And this I might remind you in a textbook published by India's National Council of Educational Research and Training, responsible to Parliament and the Indian nation. Is this subverting Indian nationalism? Doesn't the insistence that in this 16-month civil war, people's holocaust or tumult or catastrophe, as we might describe it, there were no national victories or losses? Doesn't this subvert Indian and Pakistani nationalism? Chauvinistic and sectarian political formations in India are likely to criticize much of this chapter as anti-national, and some teachers have indeed expressed a similar opinion to me. The chapter underscores that those carrying out murder or maiming could be Hindus, Sikhs or Indians and those providing humane help, Muslims or Pakistanis. What function does this idea serve? Is the writer trying to replace shrill patriotism with cosmopolitan citizenship, a citizenship of the world community? Political thinkers such as Bhikhu Parekh and social science educators such as Hugh Starkey have begun to conceive of not just global citizenship, but also a model where citizens have feelings of belonging both to a nation state and to their imagined communities, which may extend beyond the territory of the state where they live. The imagined community of the new citizens is and will be not merely, they say, a community of individuals, but also a community of communities. The academics and officials of the National Council, and at times even the scholars who wrote for these textbooks after 2005, might hold otherwise. They sometimes insist that they work from a national perspective, possibly from an extra-national one, but not from an anti-national one. What has been done in this chapter, therefore, could also be seen from some national perspective, albeit a very different one from what is commonly understood as nationalism today. This brings me to the core of the matter, to the concept of nationalism. How do we understand this vexed concept? Given the recent summary dismissal of nationalism, we need to remind ourselves that, broadly speaking, its history has witnessed the development of two types of thought and movements: the ethnic nationalist and the civic nationalist. And many of you would be familiar with this and would know that Michael Ignatieff in Blood and Belonging, Journeys into the New Nationalism, wrote about this in 1993. But there are other people who make similar distinctions as the one that Ignatieff made between ethnic nationalism on the one side and civic nationalism on the other. Take, for example, Maurizio Virilli, For Love of Country, an essay on patriotism and nationalism, published in 1995. Here, a distinction is made between Republican patriotism and nationalism. Virilli understands Republican patriotism as the same as Ignatieff's civic nationalism. And he says the enemies of Republican patriotism are tyranny, despotism, oppression, and corruption. And nationalism, the enemies are cultural contamination, heterogeneity, racial impurity, and social, political, intellectual, and cultural disunion. So therefore, the equation that is being made here is between what is called nationalism in Virilli and ethnic nationalism in Ignatieff. Much earlier than this, in 1968, George Orwell, in an essay called Notes on Nationalism, made similar distinctions. And then we have another book. I don't want to spend too much time on the literature because that will take me away from the main issue. There is Leah Greenfeld, who wrote a book called Nationalism: 5 Roads to Modernity, who also distinguishes between a civic nationalism that identifies nationality with citizenship and an ethnic nationalism where the main features are genetic or cultural in nature. So there are all kinds of typologies, but broadly speaking, if you look at the literature, you'll see that there is this distinction being made between Republican patriotism and civic nationalism on the one side, and between what some might just call nationalism and some others might call ethnic nationalism on the other side. So, two kinds of broad baskets: the ethnic nationalist and the civic nationalist. The civic nationalism, aspects of which first emerged in Great Britain, France, and America in the 18th century, is based on a civic definition of belonging: shared attachment to democracy, to consensual or publicly debated modes of governance, political practices and values, to rule of law. While all nationalisms may adhere to doctrines of popular sovereignty, civic nationalism vests sovereignty in all the people, regardless of creed, race, color, gender, language, or ethnicity. It seeks to create a community of equal, rights-exercising citizens and defines nationhood in terms of citizenship, not ethnicity or religion. It was to this kind of nationalism, inspired by the ideal of working for and unsegregated citizenry that stalwarts such as Gandhi, Nehru, the communist leader Namboodiripad, and many Bollywood actors too subscribed. I'm talking the actors of the 50s. They believed that Bombay films could be used to create a better, more egalitarian, secular India. It was in this sense of civic nationalism that the Indian left used the language of patriotism until just a quarter of a century ago. And you might know that the CPI itself had a newspaper called The Patriot. In citing examples of civic nationalists, I do not wish to treat the ideas of a range of protagonists as an undifferentiated mass. Nor am I implying that in including all the people in their ideal conception of sovereignty, civic nationalists are above exercising power in favor of a certain segment of the population. Like any other contestation over power, civic nationalism too excludes bodies of people from power axes and ideas and lifestyles from its vision of the good life, especially so when it is making civilizing claims. What I am saying, however, is that civic nation building related to creating a vibrant civil society is not entirely dead. That even today, therefore, all nationalism may not be the primordial curse we dread. It needs to be understood that nation-states themselves are not dead, not as yet at least, and continue to preeminently intervene in societal structures the world over, directly controlling or overseeing sectors such as education. Since we cannot wish away the nation-state in the near future, and since we believe we must, using the organs of the nation-state, endeavor to contribute to social regeneration and growth, many of us today might be civic nationalists, people who believe in the duty of the nation-state to provide appropriate security, opportunity, education, health, and other means for leading enabled lives. Equally, we think it its duty to fight the dangers that engulf us, not least the monster of sectarian conflict. Therefore, the implication is that many of us also may believe in citizenship education, albeit one that inculcates multiple forms of belongingness, with no single form necessarily privileged, and also something that is premised on the idea of democratic rights, rule of law, and a reasoned critique of state policies, not blind deference to state power. It is in this sense that the National Council of Educational Research and Training operates with and helps deepen the paradigm of civic citizenship or civic nationalism. By according appropriate space to a multiplicity of voices from within the country and without, it seeks to promote respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms and pro-people policies, the cornerstone of popular sovereignty and civic nationalism. And of course, I have to add a rider that I'm speaking of the NCERT that created the books written in consonance with the NCF of 2005, and I'm talking of the period 2005 to 2008. The partition chapter and several other pieces in social science textbooks have certainly subverted ethnic or religious nationalism, or the excesses of civic nationalism itself, while simultaneously upholding the core features of the latter. Hence, in its current textbooks, the NCERT has recast nationalism in its older civic form. It has shown that civic nationalism will carry considerable resonance so long as popular sovereignty continues to be pegged to the nation-state. It has also demonstrated that if identities are constructed through several overlapping, cross-cutting or concentric factors, civic nationalism can comfortably sit with notions of changing citizenship, namely with the idea of cosmopolitan citizenship, derived as the latter is from the equal entitlement of all to human rights, justice, equality, and sustainability. I wish to end by sharing with you something about the famous biologist, J.B.S. Haldane. Haldane, as you know, was originally British, but he moved to a job in the Indian Statistical Institute in Calcutta in 1956, and thereafter he became an Indian citizen. Some 5 years later, in 1961, an American scientist called Conkling wrote about Haldane and said, Haldane is a world citizen. And I would like to read out to you Haldane's reply. Alden immediately replied, and he said, "No doubt I am in some sense a citizen of the world. But I believe with Thomas Jefferson that one of the chief duties of a citizen is to be a nuisance to the government of his state." One of the chief duties of a citizen is to be a nuisance to the government of his state. As there is no world state, I cannot do this. On the other hand, I can be and am a nuisance to the government of India, which has the merit of permitting a good deal of criticism, though it reacts to it rather slowly. I also happen to be a proud citizen of India, which is a lot more diverse than Europe, let alone the US, the USSR, China, and thus a better model for a possible world organization. It may of course break up, India may of course break up, but it is a wonderful experiment, so I want to be labeled an Indian citizen. This then was Halden's conception of citizenship and civic belonging to a nation state, a conception shared, I might remind you again, by Gandhi, Ambedkar, Nehru, Namboodiripad, Romila Thapar, Satish Chandra, Bipin Chandra, the three people, the three historians who wrote the NCERT's history textbooks in the 1970s. And those books continued till about 2002. And shared, I think, this conception is also shared, I would expect, by at least some of the authors who contributed to the history and political science textbooks of the NCERT after 2005, in the period between 2005 and 2008. I would end by saying that we in India and elsewhere, the left in this country and elsewhere has allowed the right to have the monopoly over the language of patriotism. And the political costs of this have been very high. Thanks.